Hello everybody! Today we're going to unbox, take a close-up look and test the Oria Digital Caliper. So let's go ahead and open up the case. So as you can see, the digital caliper comes in a hard carry case. So let's go ahead and open it up. And let's go ahead and remove the contents from the case. Okay, so that's the contents of the case emptied out and laid out on the tabletop right here. So let's start off with this. So there is a user manual for the Oria Digital Caliper. Okay, we can now set the user manual to one side, and of course there is a packet of desiccant or silica gel to keep the contents dry. Make sure you put that away safely and keep that away from young children. And there is a packet of CR2032 battery to power the digital caliper, and there is a mini screwdriver as well with a Phillips head. Okay, let's set that down. And of course we do have the digital caliper itself. And it is quite a solid piece of equipment here. Let's go ahead and remove it from its protective plastic wrapper. And then we can take a close-up look at it. So it does have a solid metal construction, nice and hefty, and there is an LCD, as you can see, and there are 3 push buttons on it. And it's nice to see that there is already a battery fitted into the unit. So the battery that we saw is a backup or spare. So simple on off right there, zeroing, and the top toggles the measurement unit. So it does fractions in inches, millimeters, and inches. Okay, let me bring it up closer so you might be able to see it a bit more clearly right there. So this is the millimeter measurement, inches, and fraction in inches. Okay, so I've set it back to the millimeter measurement. And then just to show you the rest of the length of the digital caliper. So a nice clear display, easy to use buttons, on off, and of course zeroing. Zeroing just resets basically the, of course I have to undo the locking screw, making sure that it is released, and then we can reset the display at any point, which is quite good because you can always use it to measure differences as well in terms of width and thickness. But let's just do it the normal way for now. Set it all the way back and then zeroing the measurement. And on the reverse side of the digital scale or digital caliper, and of course over here, there is some more measurement information. And just to show you the thickness of the unit as well. So you can hear it is very solid in construction, and it does have an IP rating stamped into the body of the digital caliper, IP54. So there is some level of waterproofing and dustproofing. And as I've shown you at the top, this is the locking screw or retaining screw or retaining thumb screw, just to fix the jaws or the position of your caliper so that it doesn't affect the reading that you've just taken. Okay, simple lock and release, clockwise and counterclockwise. And of course this wheel here is for very fine adjustments to move the caliper up or down the scale without having to do it the very kind of heavy-handed way. So yep, for very delicate adjustments right there. And let's open it all the way out. So let's close it in, zero it, and then flip all the way out so it does lock at the end. No fear of it popping out of its ruler right there. And it displays 152 millimeters, and it measures down to the hundredths. So that's 15.2 centimeters in maximum measurement there. Okay, so now I suppose let's go ahead and do some measurements. So I do have some items lying around, so let's go ahead and measure them. So here we have two notes, 15 pounds altogether, a 10-pound note, and the very newly issued 5-pound note, which is a plastic note that's replaced the paper note. So altogether, 15 pounds, and that's my whole life savings, so I have to be very careful with it. So let's go ahead and see if we can measure the thickness of the notes. It's a big question mark, I'm not even sure, but let's give it a try. So it does measure the thickness. As you can see, it is 0.11 millimeters thick. I've just pushed the wheel right up against the note, so it is at its maximum travel there against the note, and locking the thumb screw down right there sets the jaws in place, so no need to keep the hold on the wheel anymore. Okay, so 0.11. Unfortunately, I don't have the old paper 5-pound note, so I can't compare the thickness, but let's go ahead and release the retaining screw or thumb screw and release the external jaws. And I have to mention, these are the external measurement jaws and those for internal widths or thickness measurements. So internal jaws and external jaws. Now let's go ahead and measure the 10-pound note, but before we do that, let's just make sure that it does show at 0 with the jaws fully closed. Now let's go ahead and open it up again. So 10-pound note, place it right there, and roll the wheel along. And as you can see, pushed right up against it, and with the same measurement as well. So 0.11 millimeters thick. Okay, so very cool. Release and release. And now let's measure some other items very quickly. Okay, so over here I do have a bunch of NATO and a Zulu watch strap, and of course I do have my trusty Tudor Submariner Snowflake MN Marine National reference 7016/0. And what we can do with the digital caliper is we can measure, and let me just reset the measurement there. We can use the internal jaws at the top to measure the lug width between the lugs. So we simply make sure that it is zeroed by pressing on the 0 button. Okay, there we go. And then what we want to do is move it along just enough to measure the lug width between the lugs right there. So I'm just going to rest it gently on the spring bar and then roll the wheel along, and trying to keep the LCD in view at the same time. So a bit of a juggling act for me, but just bear with me and we will get there. I do have to be slightly delicate about this. Okay, and there we go. And the measurement shows 20.22 millimeters. And if we need to change the measurement, of course, should have locked that down before, but that's just fine. And if we need to toggle the measurement unit, just press on the, oops, almost pressed the wrong one, the top button right there. So that should toggle the different units right there. So inches in fractions, back to millimeters, and then inches. So 3 different types of measurement units. Okay, so we've done that. What we can also do is measure the thickness. Let's go ahead and release the retaining screw or locking screw. And so we've just used the internal jaws to measure the lug width. Now let's go back to the external jaws. So nice to see that it's back to 0, fully closed. And what we can do now is measure the thickness of the case. So it is held pretty nicely right there. Lock it down. And there we go. So that's the thickness of the case right there, the watch case, from the case back to the top of the plexiglass. And if we need to measure differences between, let's say, if we wanted to measure up to the bezel or the thickness of the plexiglass from the height of the bezel, we could zero it from that point and then close it down up to the point of the bezel. So let's roll it right down if we can. Let's see, maybe do it this way so you can see more clearly. Oh, of course I need to release that locking screw. So not quite the correct way of measuring, because I've noticed that the jaws don't quite reach the case back doing it that way, but you get the idea that it is roughly .5 or 3.49 millimeters protruding of the bezel of the plexiglass. So the plexiglass does come out 3.5 millimeters from the surface of the watch's bezel. So that's just a random data or statistic there. Not that it matters very much, but that's just a demonstration just to show you what you can do by zeroing it at a different measuring point and then making a new measurement. So, okay, we've done that with the watch case. Now let's go ahead and quickly measure some watch strap thickness. So I do have 4 watch straps, as you can see. They are, starting from the bottom one here, is the Monkey Swag MKS black and orange Bengal NATO watch strap. And then moving up along is the ZULUDIVER black and red NATO watch strap. And then the ZULUDIVER Italian rubber Bonetto Cinturini NATO watch strap. And then the top one is the DaLuca Ballistic Nylon NATO watch strap, which is more of a Zulu watch strap actually. So let's go ahead and quickly measure the thickness of the strap. So closing the caliper right down and then resetting it to 0. And let's go ahead and open it up. And of course, I should be measuring at another point, not the middle, because there are 2 layers there. So let's just measure 1 layer as it should be for the thickness measurement. So let's do that just above the pinhole there. So closing it down right there will give us a measurement. Okay, using the wheel. back and forth. So there we go, 1.18 millimeters thick. And let's move on to the next strap. Okay, so this is 1.2 millimeters thick. And moving on to the Italian rubber strap. And it is 1.46 millimeters thick. And lastly, the ballistic nylon strap, which is quite a thick nylon strap. Let's go ahead and close the jaws. And it's 1.46 millimeters thick. So there we go. So 4 strap measurement thickness taken right there using the Oria Digital Caliper. And let's go ahead and okay, no need for that. So that's the Oria Digital Caliper. Thanks for watching and happy measuring!